Have you ever felt a chill in Tokyo that had nothing to do with the weather? A coldness that seeped deeper than the autumn rain slicking the neon-streaked pavement? Kenji Tanaka knew that feeling. At 22, navigating the labyrinthine pressures of university life and the soul-crushing necessity of part-time jobs left little room for imagination, yet sometimes standing amidst the indifferent Shibuya crowds, he felt it, a prickle of awareness, an echo of something ancient and unseen brushing against the modern world. It reminded him, uncomfortably, of a fleeting glimpse from his childhood in his quiet coastal hometown. Something tall and pale vanishing into the sea mist, leaving behind only an unnatural stillness and a sense of profound wrongness. He'd buried the memory, channeling the unease into his folklore studies, treating yokai and spirits as academic curiosities, safely confined to dusty pages. Until the chill started following his best friend. Kenji pushed his glasses up his nose, a nervous habit, as he watched Yuki Sato across the cheap ramen counter. Her usual vibrant energy seemed muted, dimmed like a flickering fluorescent light. "You sure you're okay, Yuki?" he asked, swirling the noodles in his broth. "You've seemed off lately." Yuki forced a smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just tired, Kenji. This internship is amazing, but demanding. Lady Chiyo expects perfection." She touched the elegant silver pendant at her throat, a recent gift from her enigmatic new boss. "It's worth it, though. This could open so many doors." Lady Chiyo. The name itself seemed to carry a whisper of frost. Kenji had only seen her once at a gallery opening Yuki had insisted he attend. Tall, impossibly elegant, dressed in shimmering white, she moved through the crowd with an unnatural grace. People seemed to subtly shift away from her, an unconscious deference mixed with unease. Kenji had felt it then too, a distinct drop in temperature around her, a psychic cold that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. He'd dismissed it as nerves, a trick of the light. Now seeing Yuki's pallor, the faint blue tinge beneath her eyes, the way she shivered despite the stuffy ramen shop, the dusty pages of his textbooks felt suddenly, terrifyingly relevant. Yuki Onna. The Snow Woman. Legends of beautiful, deadly spirits who drained the life force from unwary humans. Ridiculous. This was modern Tokyo, and yet the chill was undeniable. He had to find out more, for Yuki's sake. His investigation began, as most things did for Kenji, amidst the hushed stacks of the university library and the cluttered incense-scented confines of old man Hiroshi's antique shop in Yanaka. Online searches for Lady Chiyo yielded only polished PR, philanthropist, patron of the arts, businesswoman with impeccable taste and obscure origins. No cracks in the facade. Hiroshi, polishing a tarnished brass mirror, was less forthcoming but more suggestive. "Powerful spirits walk among us still, boy," he'd grunted, not looking up. "Some wear faces woven from moonlight and frost. They offer gifts that chill the soul." He tapped a dusty scroll depicting a woman with flowing white kimono amidst a blizzard. Legends speak of a Fuyuhime, the winter princess. Lonely, hungry, best not to attract her gaze. Hiroshi wouldn't elaborate further, merely warning Kenji that digging too deep could invite unwanted attention. Kenji tried talking to Yuki again, pointing out the historical parallels, the folklore warnings. She laughed it off, albeit weakly. "Kenji, you and your spooky stories! It's a fantastic opportunity. Don't ruin this for me with yokai tales." She clutched the pendant protectively. Her dismissal stung, but fear for her gnawed at him more sharply. He needed proof, something tangible. He recalled a fragment of lore. Some spirits were vulnerable to blessed items. It was a long shot. He acquired a small vial of holy water from a local temple, pretending it was for cleansing his apartment. The next time he met Yuki for coffee, his hand trembled as he accidentally knocked his water bottle over, splashing a few drops near her pendant. There was no dramatic reaction, no hiss of smoke, but for a split second the silver seemed to dull, and Yuki flinched, rubbing her chest. "Weird static," she mumbled. It wasn't much, but it was enough. He was on the right track. That evening, his phone rang, an unknown number. He answered hesitantly. "Mr. Tanaka," a voice like chilled silk whispered, devoid of warmth or inflection. "Lady Chiyo. Curiosity is a dangerous trait. Some things are best left buried in the snows of time." A dial tone followed, leaving Kenji's blood running cold. She knew. The confrontation, when it came, wasn't direct. The next morning, a sleek, anonymous black car delivered a small, lacquered box to Kenji's cramped apartment. Inside, nestled on velvet, was a single, exquisitely crafted card. No signature, just elegant calligraphy. A test for the curious scholar. Bring me Shimobashira no Namida, the tears of frost pillars found only where winter weeps within this city. You have 48 hours. Failure will deepen your friend's fatigue. Kenji's heart pounded. Shimobashira. He knew the term, delicate ice crystal formations pushed up from the soil by freezing moisture. But tears and finding them in Tokyo? It sounded like an impossible poetic riddle. A yokai's challenge. He spent hours frantically searching online forums, geological databases, obscure botany sites. Nothing matched the poetic description. Defeated, he slumped onto a bench in Ueno Park as dusk bled purple across the sky. The air was sharp, colder than usual for late autumn. He had to try something. He remembered Hiroshi's words about echoes, about spirits lingering. Where would a being of cold weep? Perhaps places of forgotten sorrow or intense residual chill. He started visiting old cemeteries, neglected shrines, perpetually shaded corners beneath bridges, anywhere the urban heat island effect might be weakest. He felt watched, the prickling sensation returning, the air growing colder the closer he seemed to get. On the second day, nearing his deadline, desperation led him to an old, almost forgotten graveyard tucked behind the Yanaka cemetery proper. The air here was unnaturally still, frigid. And then he saw it, a flicker of movement near a crumbling Jizo statue. A sleek black cat, unnaturally large, was struggling, one paw caught in what looked like crude, glowing chalk symbols sketched on the ground, amateur exorcist seals. The cat hissed, its eyes gleaming with intelligent malice, but also fear. Kenji hesitated. His time was running out. But leaving the creature felt wrong. He recognized the symbols from a minor text on Onmyodo. Carefully, remembering the diagrams, he used a fallen twig to smudge the key lines, breaking the containment pattern. The glowing faded. The cat stopped struggling, regarding him with unnerving intensity. It stretched, then seemed to melt and reform, solidifying for a moment into the shape of a lithe boy cloaked in shadows before snapping back into feline form. A low, gravelly voice echoed in Kenji's mind, not heard but felt. Debt acknowledged, balance sought. What does the foolish human seek in winter's cold tears? Current part characters, 3,037. Total characters, 8,168. Startled but seizing the opportunity, Kenji explained the challenge, the tears of frost pillars. The back Neko, who introduced himself mentally as Kuro, flicked his tail dismissively. Fuyuhime's leavings. Places she lingers, feeding on despair, leave a chill that births such fragile things. Follow. And the debt is cleared. Kuro flowed like liquid shadow through the city's hidden veins, over mossy walls, through narrow gaps between buildings, across darkened rooftops inaccessible to ordinary humans. Kenji struggled to keep up, his breath misting in the unnaturally cold air that seemed to trail in Kuro's wake. Finally, beneath an old graffiti-scarred railway bridge spanning a sluggish canal, Kuro stopped. The air here was biting cold, far colder than the surrounding area. And there, sheltered in a patch of damp earth where sunlight never reached, were delicate, needle-like ice crystals, shimmering faintly like frozen tears. Shimobashira no Namida. Kenji carefully collected a sample in a small, insulated container he'd brought. Kuro watched impassively. Debt paid. Do not seek me again, human. Fuyuhime plays dangerous games. And then the buck Neko was gone, melting into the urban twilight. Kenji raced back across Tokyo, delivering the container via the same anonymous courier service just minutes before the deadline expired. He watched Yuki anxiously over the next day. The change was subtle, but undeniable. A touch more color returned to her cheeks. She coughed less. The pendant at her throat still gleamed, but the oppressive chill around her seemed to have lessened fractionally. He had passed the first test, but relief was short-lived. He knew this was only the beginning. Chiyo wasn't just testing him, she was playing with him, drawing him deeper into her icy web. He needed to understand her weakness. He went back to Hiroshi, sharing what he'd learned, mentioning Fuyuhime by name. The old man's face grew grave. Fuyuhime, a name whispered, not spoken aloud. The legends are fragmented, boy, but they say her heart was not always frozen. Something happened long ago. A promise made under the Tanabata stars, a fleeting warmth she embraced, then lost. They say her power falters if confronted with the echo of that warmth, that broken vow. He rummaged through a pile of scrolls, pulling out a faded map showing older districts of Edo, pointing to a small, almost invisible mark. Hoshi no Inori Shrine, the Star Prayer Shrine. Forgotten now, likely dilapidated. The legend claims that was the place. Before Kenji could process this, another lacquered box arrived. Inside, another card. An artifact is misplaced. A star-shaped ima, unique to the old Hoshi no Inori Shrine. Retrieve it for my collection before the first snow falls upon this city. A simple task for a resourceful scholar. The first snow was forecast for the day after tomorrow. The game continued, the stakes higher than ever. Finding Hoshi no Inori Shrine was the first challenge. It wasn't on any modern map. Hiroshi's faded Edo-era chart placed it in a now densely populated area near Nippori Station, swallowed by urban sprawl. Kenji spent a day scouring the back streets, looking for clues. An unusually old boundary stone, a pathway that didn't quite fit the modern grid. Finally, tucked behind a row of nondescript apartment buildings, hidden by overgrown bamboo, he found it. A crumbling stone torii gate, barely visible. Beyond it lay a small neglected compound, suffocated by weeds and silence. The air was noticeably colder here, heavy with neglect. Getting inside the shrine building itself looked impossible. The doors were warped shut, sealed by time and decay. He needed Kuro. Leaving an offering of the highest quality tuna sashimi he could afford near the graveyard where he first encountered the back neko, Kenji waited anxiously. Hours passed. Just as he was about to give up, a familiar black shape detached itself from the shadows. Expensive bait, human. What trouble now? Kenji explained the situation, the shrine, the ima, the deadline. Kuro circled him, tail twitching. That place is thick with old bindings and Fuyuhime's chill. Dangerous. Why should Kuro risk his fur for your foolish quest? Because she's hurting my friend, Kenji said simply. And because you owe me balance, remember? He held out another offering, a small, brightly coloured catnip mouse he'd bought on impulse. Kuro sniffed at it disdainfully, then batted it playfully with a shadowy paw. Fine, but this makes us even. More than even. Kuro led him back to the shrine after nightfall. The bake neko moved like smoke. Slipping through a crack in the foundation, Kenji hadn't even noticed. Inside, the air was freezing, thick with dust and the scent of decay. Moonlight filtered through holes in the roof, illuminating faded murals and rotting tatami mats. Kuro pointed with his snout towards the main altar, a simple wooden structure coated in grime. Wards here. Old, but Fuhime's power reinforces them. Touch nothing directly. Kuro darted around, sniffing, occasionally batting at shimmering distortions in the air that Kenji couldn't fully see. He indicated a loose floorboard near the altar. Prying it up revealed a small hidden compartment. Inside, resting on decayed silk, was a wooden tablet shaped like a 5-pointed star. It was ancient, the painted wishes barely legible, but Kenji could make out faded symbols of stars and bamboo. As his fingers brushed against it, he felt a distinct, surprising pulse of faint warmth. This was it. He carefully wrapped the ema in a clean cloth from his bag. As they slipped back out, Kuro paused. The snow comes tonight, human. Fuyuhime will be strongest. This trinket, it holds pain. Her pain. Be careful how you wield it. The first snowflakes began to drift down as Kenji emerged from the shrine's hidden enclosure, silent, fat flakes against the bruised twilight sky. The air held a new, biting intensity. He didn't head back to his apartment or towards Chiyo's gleaming skyscraper. Instinct, guided by Kuro's warning and Hiroshi's law, told him the confrontation needed to be on different terms. He couldn't beat her power, only reach her vulnerability. He sent a simple text message to the number that had called him before. I have the ima. I have the ima. Yanagibashi Bridge. Midnight. He chose the old bridge spanning the Kanda River, a place known for its quiet, slightly melancholic atmosphere, steeped in history, a contrast to Chiyo's cold modernity. He wasn't sure if she would come. Waiting on the bridge as the snow fell thicker, dusting his worn jacket, Kenji clutched the cloth-wrapped ima. Its faint warmth was a small comfort against the deepening chill. Midnight arrived. The bridge was deserted, the city lights softened by the falling snow. Then he felt it, the temperature plummeting, the air crackling with invisible energy. Lady Chiyo materialized at the far end of the bridge, a figure of impossible elegance against the swirling white. She wore a kimono the color of moonlight on snow, her silver hair catching the faint light. She glided towards him, soundless. You retrieved the trifle, scholar. Her voice was like the surface of a frozen lake. Impressive. Hand it over. Kenji stood his ground, pushing his glasses up. His heart hammered against his ribs, but his voice was steady. It's not just a trifle, is it? Hoshi no Inori Shrine, Tanabata. He saw a flicker in her icy eyes, the first crack in her perfect composure. This holds a memory, a promise. He unwrapped the ema slowly, holding the star-shaped tablet out, a promise of warmth, perhaps, made under the summer stars long before the winter took hold. Fuyuhime recoiled as if struck. The air around her solidified, frost spreading rapidly across the bridge's railings, snowflakes turning into sharp shards of ice swirling around her. Insolent human, you know nothing. Her voice lost its silken quality, cracking like ice under pressure. Illusions sprang up around Kenji. Images of Yuki, pale and frozen. Images of his own deepest fears, failures looming large. The cold intensified, seeking to numb his mind, freeze his resolve. Current part characters, 281. Total characters, 7 to 680. Kenji staggered, the psychic cold biting deep, despair clawing at the edges of his mind. He saw Yuki's face, pleading, fading. He saw himself failing exams, lost and alone in the vast city. But he clung to the ema, its faint, persistent warmth, a tiny anchor in the storm. He remembered Kuro's words. It holds pain, her pain. This wasn't just an attack. It was a reflection of her own frozen heart. You weren't always like this. Kenji pushed the words out, his breath misting heavily. He focused on the ema, on the faded symbols of wishes and stars. Someone wished with you, didn't they? On Tanabata. A promise to meet again, a moment of warmth you held on to. The ice shards swirled faster, dangerously close. Fuyuhime let out a sound that was almost a sob, distorted into a shriek of wind. Warmth fades, promises break, only the cold endures. Just as the icy vortex threatened to overwhelm him, a streak of black shot from the shadows beneath the bridge. Kuro, a blur of motion, slammed into an invisible point near Fuyuhime, causing the air to shimmer violently. The illusions flickered. It was only a split-second distraction, but it was enough. Kenji surged forward, holding the ema high. Maybe it faded for them, he shouted over the wind's howl. But you kept the memory, you kept the promise alive inside, buried under the ice. This ema isn't just pain, it's proof that warmth was real. He thrust the ema towards her, not as a weapon, but as an offering, an acknowledgement. Fuyuhime froze. The swirling ice storm faltered. She stared at the star-shaped wood, her flawless features contorting with centuries of buried grief. The intense cold receded slightly, the illusions dissolving. Kenji could see her clearly now. Not just the elegant yokai, but something ancient, lonely, and profoundly wounded. The silence stretched, broken only by the soft hiss of falling snow. Fuyuhime lowered her gaze from the ema to Kenji. Her eyes, usually like chips of ice, held a flicker of something else. Confusion, sorrow, perhaps a dawning awareness. The mask of cold detachment had cracked, revealing the ancient pain beneath. She didn't speak for a long moment, the snow piling silently on her shoulders. Then slowly she raised a hand, not in attack, but towards the ema Kenji held. Her fingers, long and pale, trembled slightly as they hovered inches away. "The stars, they fall," she whispered, her voice barely audible, stripped of its former power, filled only with a vast weariness. The warmth, forgotten. "It doesn't have to be," Kenji said softly, surprising himself with his own conviction. He hadn't planned this, hadn't known what would happen. He only knew destruction wasn't the answer. Understanding felt more potent. A silent agreement seemed to pass between them, mediated by the small, warm piece of wood radiating the memory of a long-ago summer wish. He saw Yuki's face in his mind, saw her smile returning, the pendant vanishing from her neck. Fuyuhime nodded, a barely perceptible movement. The oppressive atmosphere lifted completely. The unnatural cold dissipated, leaving only the normal chill of a snowy Tokyo night. The promise is remembered. The words echoed not aloud, but in the sudden stillness a feeling more than a sound. She turned, her form blurring at the edges, seeming to dissolve into the falling snow. "Do not seek Fuyuhime again, scholar." The whisper lingered as she vanished completely, leaving Kenji alone on the snow-dusted bridge, clutching the ancient ema. The faint warmth it held began to fade. Its purpose served. Kuro materialized beside him, shaking snow from his black fur. Messy. sentimental, very human. He glanced at the spot where Fuyuhime had stood. She will keep her word. The old magic binds differently. Kuro stretched. Balance restored. The debt is cleared. Now about that premium tuna. Kenji focused on his studies, the folklore texts now imbued with a new, unsettling reality. He still worked his part-time jobs, still worried about rent, but the gnawing self-doubt had lessened, replaced by a quiet confidence forged in the face of impossible cold. He had faced an ancient power not with strength but with understanding, with empathy leveraged by knowledge. He had survived. Sometimes, walking home late through the rain-slicked streets, he'd feel a sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature, a fleeting chill on the back of his neck, and glance around, half expecting to see a figure of moonlight and frost. Other times, he'd catch a glimpse of an unusually large black cat watching him from a shadowed alleyway, its eyes gleaming with cynical amusement before vanishing. Tokyo remained a city of dazzling lights and deep shadows, of bustling crowds and hidden spirits. Kenji Tanaka now walked through it with open eyes, aware of the unseen currents beneath the surface, forever changed by his encounter with winter's heart, carrying the quiet knowledge that even the deepest cold might hold a flicker of forgotten warmth, waiting for a promise to be remembered. The chill was still there sometimes, but now it felt less like a threat and more like a reminder. He aced his folklore exams that semester. Professor Ishikawa, a stern man known for his rigorous standards, actually raised an eyebrow at Kenji's final paper, an analysis of Yuki-onna variations focusing on themes of memory loss and broken promises in regional legends. "Tanaka," Ishikawa had said, peering over his spectacles, "your insights are unusually perceptive, almost first-hand." Kenji had merely pushed his glasses up and mumbled something about extensive research in Hiroshi-san's collection. The old shop owner had indeed become slightly more communicative, occasionally leaving specific relevant texts out on the counter for Kenji, never acknowledging their significance directly. It was his way of continuing the mentorship, Kenji supposed. Yuki, fully recovered and vibrant again, landed a different, less glamorous but ultimately more fulfilling internship at a local museum. She often dragged Kenji to exhibits, blissfully unaware of how close she'd come to becoming an exhibit herself. Their friendship deepened, Kenji appreciating her uncomplicated warmth more than ever, while Yuki seemed to rely on his quiet steadiness, sensing a newfound strength in him she couldn't quite name. He saw Kuro occasionally. Sometimes it was just a glimpse of a black tail disappearing around a corner. Other times the back neko would pointedly sit outside the convenience store during Kenji's shift, expecting a treat. Their interactions were transactional, brief, but held an undercurrent of grudging respect. "City's quieter now," Kuro conveyed once after accepting a piece of dried squid. "Less freezing." Kenji understood. Fuyuhime was keeping her word. The old shrine Hoshino Inori remained forgotten, swallowed by the city. Kenji visited it once more, months later, on a warm summer evening. The air within the small compound was still cool, but it lacked the biting, unnatural chill. It felt peaceful, melancholic. He left a small offering of fresh flowers near the crumbling altar, a silent acknowledgement. As he turned to leave, he thought he saw a single firefly blink near the Torii gate, a tiny spark of warmth in the twilight shadows. Or perhaps it was just his imagination. He continued his studies, his life still a balancing act of finances and academics, but the fear was gone, replaced by a vigilant awareness. He knew the world was layered, complex, filled with wonders and dangers invisible to most. He had navigated those shadows, armed only with his mind and a willingness to see beyond the surface. He was no hero, just a quiet scholar who had pushed his glasses up. He walked back towards the train station, blending into the river of humanity flowing through the Tokyo night. He was part of the city's mundane rhythm, yet forever attuned to its hidden pulse, carrying the secret of the winter princess and the star-shaped promise. One crisp late autumn evening, almost a year after his confrontation with Fuyuhime, Kenji found himself near Yanagibashi Bridge again. He hadn't planned it, just wandered after a long study session. The air was cold, but it was a normal, seasonal chill. He leaned on the railing where he had faced her, looking down at the dark water reflecting the city lights. No unnatural frost formed under his touch. No icy presence manifested, It felt ordinary, yet the memory was vivid, tangible. He wondered about her, the ancient spirit bound by a reawakened promise. Was she finding peace in her solitude? Was the warmth he'd reminded her of a comfort or a renewed source of pain? He'd likely never know. A sleek black cat hopped onto the railing beside him, startling him. Kuro. The bake neko looked unusually serious, its yellow eyes fixed on the water. She watches, sometimes. Kuro sent the thought clear in Kenji's mind. From the spaces between snowfalls, the shrine holds her anchor. Kenji nodded slowly. Is she okay? It felt strange asking after the well-being of a being who had nearly frozen the life out of his best friend. Kuro flicked an ear. Define okay for one who measures time in centuries and feels emotions like glaciers carving. She exists. She keeps the pact. The cold is less absolute. That, Kenji supposed, was as close to redemption as such a being might get. It was enough. He reached out hesitantly and scratched Kuro behind the ears. The bike neko leaned into it for a surprising moment before pulling away, pretending indifference. Don't get familiar, human. But there was no real heat in the mental rebuke. Kuro gave a final enigmatic look towards the darkened shrine district across the river, then vanished as silently as he had appeared. Kenji stayed a while longer, watching the river flow. He wasn't afraid anymore. He understood that the supernatural wasn't inherently evil, just different, operating by rules and pains humans could barely comprehend. His encounter hadn't just saved Yuki, it had broadened his own understanding of the world, confirming the value of his chosen field in ways no textbook ever could. He finally pushed himself off the railing, adjusting his glasses. Time to head home. He had an early shift at the library tomorrow, and rent wasn't going to pay itself. As he walked towards the station, a single, perfect snowflake landed on his hand, melting instantly. Winter was coming again, but Kenji Tanaka met it with a calm heart, ready for whatever echoes the changing seasons might bring. His graduation thesis, expanding on his earlier paper, argued for a more nuanced understanding of yokai motivations in folklore, suggesting that many tales interpreted as simple monster stories might actually encode complex narratives of loss,